The funeral is over, the guests have gone home, the flowers, well, they faded. And suddenly, you're the one holding the keys. So today, we're not talking about probate, we're talking about people. Because sometimes the first thing you inherit is silence that no one prepared you for, and a weight that feels, well, pretty heavy. Like, I remember standing in the hallway a few days after my mom's service and feeling a bit lost. Some folks had asked me what would happen to the house. Some even made the assumption that we were moving into it, but I couldn't even catch my breath. And so this episode is for those of us who've been there, and it's for those who break into a cold sweat just thinking about it. It's for those who want to do better, those who want to start the conversation earlier so we don't leave our families overwhelmed and in the dark about their legacy. So that's where we're going to start today on inheritance to income. I'm Garrick Francis, and this is Inheritance to Income, a podcast about what we leave behind, what we carry forward, and how we honor the people and the legacies that shaped us, and how we turned a blessed inheritance into income for generations. Today's conversation is about what happens when grief and responsibility show up at the same time. When you're trying to mourn someone you love and manage the logistics they left behind, what's the emotional cost, and where do we start? And so I'm really, really, really happy today that we're joined by my guest and my niecey, Mia Jones, a mental health nurse practitioner, a certified life coach, a mother, a daughter, a granddaughter, and an author. And so I wanted to bring her in because she works with individuals, with families, dealing with loss and trauma and transition. And as someone who's seen both the clinical side and the personal side, she's really passionate about helping people move through grief and not around it. And so, Mia, welcome. Thanks for coming on. And I don't know if you want to take a moment to tell people a little bit about your background or your practice, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you for having me. Such a great introduction. Yes, I am a mental health nurse practitioner. I have been in the healthcare field for 10 years, a nurse practitioner for 3 years. And so I own my own business now. It's called Peace of Mind PLLC. And so I manage psychiatric medications through that business, and I also offer faith based coaching.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And yes, I'm proud. Proud uncle. But me, okay, so today, I really wanted to start um, with the tension that so many people feel, right? You're grieving a loss, but life just doesn't stop, right?
Yep.
There are forms to fill out, there are calls to make, there are houses to check on. How does this tension kind of show up emotionally, or what do people start to feel?
Yeah, it can almost feel like I like to say like an internal tug of war. I mean, your mind and your body can be trying to manage all that you need to manage. You know that, responsibilities
Mm-hmm.
are piling up. You want to think logically, but your soul just wants to mourn. And so, that conflict is eternal, and a lot of people don't, or internal rather, a lot of people really don't see what's going on the inside. But emotionally, it may make someone feel like they are numb one day, the next day they're overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot.
Yeah, I could agree. I could agree. But as you say that, you say it's a lot. But what's uh, one of the things we want to do is really help people as they go through this process. So
Hmm.
what's the risk when people just push through it, right?
Yeah.
I kind of think I remember, when I dealt with it, or when other people have told me their stories, you push through it, or certain
Hmm.
generations kind of have been, suck it up, buttercup.
Yep. So grief is a living thing, right? So we've got to create space for it. The risk when we don't create space for it is, sometimes it can look like it's gone, but it really just hides. And I think that what people find is Down the line, it can manifest as anxiety, burnout, and just irritability. And you really don't want to know what it is, but it's unprocessed grief.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, unprocessed grief. Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to kind of this unprocessed grief. But when you're when you're grieving like that, or when
Mm-hmm.
you're not grieving or not processing the grief, I've kind of read about something, and people talk about like a decision-free zone, or you know, taking time before you make big decisions or big choices.
Yep.
Like, what are some steps people can do if they know they've got to manage this process, estate, inheritance, and all this, but yet they're still processing themselves?
Yeah, I love the concept of just the decision free zone. It really is just kind of giving yourself permission to wait and pause until your emotions feel stable.
Mm.
A lot of times it can kind of just protect your peace and kind of save some regret from making an impulsive decision, right off the bat when you're still kind of processing.
Right, right. And what type of advice? I mean, I know, again, when we're talking, a lot of things we hope to speak to people is this interplay between generations,
Mm-hmm.
right? So a lot of what's going to happen in the great wealth transfer is, baby boomers and even some of the silent generation are going to, leave their inherited properties to their, Gen X
Yep.
and to their millennial and to their even Gen Z children and grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
And the generations, not to stereotype, but they kind of deal with things differently.
Mm-hmm.
So what should people do if they're feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, one of the first steps is really awareness. What does overwhelm feel like to you? Is it that you are just kind of feeling on edge? You are a little bit more short with people and irritable. You are feeling kind of foggy, scatterbrained. And so once you realize that that is how you're feeling, being able to pause, kind of take some time for yourself and communicate with other people around you. Like, I need silence. I need space. I need a walk, whatever that is that you need.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's really helpful, and I think it's hard for families that they haven't talked about these things in advance.
Yep.
So I think there was a study from Ameriprise that showed that 41% of people say that they've never had a conversation with their parents about what will happen when they pass away,
Wow.
and that silence, it creates stress, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it creates a stress among families. So how do people get comfortable having uncomfortable conversation, as they say?
Such a good question. I feel like, if that conversation, though uncomfortable, is not had in the appropriate amount of time, it can cause just a lot of emotional confusion. It leaves people kind of wondering what, to do, which can cause guilt and family tension, and kind of cause a lot of unnecessary pain. So, really understanding that it's going to be uncomfortable, but having those unnecessary conversations is essential.
Yeah, and I guess who can, I mean, in your experience, I guess one of the things I wonder sometimes is who initiates. I was like, in
Mm-hmm.
my instance, it was because my mom was pretty. I mean, you remember my mom? She until the day she died, she was in charge,
Yeah.
and she knew what she wanted to do with her estate, but that was because of what she had gone through with her father.
Right.
Right, so she had an event that kicked her into gear, and
Mm-hmm.
so she was really upfront with my brother and me about here's what I expect of the two sons I raised,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we had that conversation, so it really wasn't uncomfortable. But kind of, is there some way or some person who kind of really needs to take it upon themselves to initiate that type of a conversation?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different family dynamics. So I guess there's not, a clear cut or cookie cutter answer, but preferably I would think, the senior or the elder would initiate, just to kind of, make it more of a safe space, take the pressure off of it. Like, at some point,
Right,
this will be yours,
right,
so
right.
kind of initiating it that way.
Yeah, and I know too. We've at our church we've done a faith and finance series, and so it's one of those things you pray about. I mean, it's one of those things you have to really think about. what is the family dynamic, and
Yep.
and Lord, how do you want me to process this?
Mhm.
So that's
It's
great.
heavy.
That's great. If this is hitting home with you, please go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button wherever you're watching or listening. We really appreciate your continued support. We want to stay in contact with you and make sure you don't miss anything in upcoming episodes. We have a lot more that we're going to be talking about. And just want to take a moment to say this episode is brought to you by Reese Francis Studios for your photography, videography, and memory legacy needs. Please take a look at reesefrancisstudios.com or hit the link in the show notes below. They're great at what they do, and they'll help you take your visuals to the next level. Um, Mia, let's get back to just kind of talking about some of these pieces. Many listeners, I think, find themselves in this dual role, right?
Mhm.
Trying to be the responsible one, trying to be the grieving one. So, what's kind of the emotional cost of trying to manage a legacy while still mourning a person?
Yes, it is, like I said before, so heavy. If you can kind of think about it, if you're a visual person, like you're carrying two huge full book bags at the same time.
Right.
One book bag is trying to honor the legacy of your loved one, the other book bag is trying to manage your own heartbreak.
Right.
And so it can be extremely difficult. And a lot of people find themselves in that dual role,
Right.
whether they thought they would be in it or not. It can just lead to emotional exhaustion.
Yeah. Yeah, it really can.
Hmm.
Now, I was all growing up. I think I don't know whether it came from my granddad or, excuse me, my mom, or I found it somewhere. But it was this concept somebody told me of. You got to put that bag on the trouble tree when you go in the door at night when you go home, and you can pick it up the next morning on your way out,
Yep.
and it's probably a bit later, right? Or it's for some people it's you got to give up that burden because
Yes.
he says my yoke, your yoke.
Yes.
So.
You don't want to delay the healing process, though.
Right.
Want to make sure that you pause and grieve. That way, you can kind of manage the legacy appropriately.
Right. And then one of the things too with that is I've talked to people who say they felt like they had to be the strong one,
Yes.
right? Whether it's the elder, the oldest son or daughter, or the person who's in that role of having to be the strong one.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard that before? What's your take on it, and what's that say to you?
Absolutely, I've heard that before in mental health. So the strong one is the person who chooses to kind of ignore their emotional state so that they can take care of everybody else, right? And so in reality, true strength, if we can kind of reframe it, is making sure that you are self aware, that you take the necessary time, and that you ask for what you need when you need it.
That's
It's
great.
difficult.
Ask for what you need when you need it.
Yep.
And so, talk a little too from your experience. You know, I'll go back to my I put some context around the generations.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of folks in my Gen X generation and the baby boomers who came right before me where you know you say I have a therapist.
Yeah.
When I went to therapy, it was kind of the end of the conversation,
Taboo.
right? Whereas today, younger generations or people who have opened up a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
say I have a therapist, and everybody's like, yeah, me too.
Yep.
So, how do you break the stigma of being okay with talking to a therapist about things?
Yeah. I mean, if you are first generation of breaking any stigma, it can be very difficult. But it takes courage. So if prayer brings you peace, I would say pray about it. Even if it is not destigmatized in your natural family, kind of asking questions to demystify it a little bit from people who already go to therapy can help. But just taking that first step, making that call to make that first initial appointment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And is it in these cases where, is it best individuals to kind of go it alone, or married couples together,
Mm-hmm.
or family counseling? What are some of the stages of counseling as people are going through grief and these types of things?
Traditionally, grief counseling is individual. But if you find that your grief process is looking similar to that of your spouse, I don't see why you couldn't go as a group. Um, some marital counselors may be comfortable walking couples together through grief, but traditionally I see it individual.
Right, right. Yeah, it's an interesting process, and it's
Yeah.
difficult, and I think everybody there are some commonalities,
Mhm.
but everybody tends to go through it a little differently
Yes.
depending on their relationship. One thing that yeah, we talked about was when my mom passed away,
Mhm.
right? She was my mom, right?
Yeah.
She was everything, but I had a different relationship with her than my brother did.
Mhm.
But also, Aunt Sheila, my wife,
Mhm.
um, she had a wonderful relationship with my mom, and so she at the same time was grieving. But a lot of people don't necessarily talk to the spouse when the other spouse's parent has died,
So true.
and so
Yeah.
they feel a little bit off to the side. So,
Mhm.
I mean, how do again when you're dealing with these types of things, how do you think about families making sure that everybody in the family feels okay?
Yeah, I think, you know, I can kind of sum it up with compassion and communication, knowing that people are processing at the same time but differently. And then, communicating. It's okay to say, I'm not okay.
Right.
That kind of opens up the communication.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting, as we kind of talk about a lot of the business decisions with an inheritance, because when you have an estate, all of a sudden there's a lot of things that have to happen. You have to have attorneys, and you have to hire things, and you have to publish things, and there's
So
a
much.
lot of business things that go into it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, the ability to talk about that with a therapist or with a counselor, I think I just want to make sure people understand that that's a private space, right?
Yes.
That's kind of protected. Talk about, because some people would feel like, I don't want to put my family business in the street.
Yes, yes, that is a huge concern. It's common. Therapy is completely confidential. They licensed therapist has to make sure that they are what we call HIPAA compliant, and so HIPAA laws bind therapists from sharing personal information. So you are completely protected. You can go in there with your tissues and let it all out.
Your tissues and your issues.
Yes,
All right.
tissues and your
All
issues.
right. All right. All right. We can do that. That sounds great. All right. Well, great. Well, I think, for right now, I think we'll kind of leave it there. But I really want to take an opportunity for you, Mia, to be able. Where can people find you, or find your information if they have a need, or find out how to get in touch with you? That'd be
Yes.
great.
So you can go to psychologytoday.com. That is where you can find, therapists, psychiatrists. I think for me as a nurse practitioner, you have to go to the psychiatrist tab and just type in Mia Jones and you'll find me. Or you can go to my landing page. It is bit.ly, so bit.ly/healed women. All of my social media handles are at the bottom of the page.
That's great. All right. And I mentioned before you're an author,
Yes.
so your book is.
It's called Forgetful, Fertile, and Freed. So it's available on Amazon and it is just a memoir of my life. So definitely go on Amazon and read more if you want to hear my testimony.
That sounds great. Hey, thank you for listening. We really, really appreciate it. If you want to see the property that we converted from inheritance to income, please check it out at theoberlinpalais.com or click the link in the show notes below. We would love to host your next business or family gathering in Raleigh, North Carolina, one of the up and coming cities across the country. And so for now, this is Inheritance to Income. I'm Garrick Francis. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. We really, really appreciate the time you granted us. And so we hope that you'll join us next week for another episode. But until then, we hope you have a blessed, transformational, and wonder filled